I would start off with the peace greeting, but I think that will be inappropriate for this message today. There's not anything really peaceful about my message today because of the deception by the likes of Ungawa Johnson. To call him Umar or Ifatunde would be a disgrace to people with the names Umar or Ifatunde. Hell, even to call him Ogabuga would be a disgrace. It might actually be somebody with that name. Not only that, but it might seem like I'm actually just making fun of black folks in general when I say it, and that's not why I'm recording this. I'm recording this because he's an enemy to black folks. And I said this yesterday. But there was something that I didn't get a chance to really go in on yesterday. That is that Ungawa went on the Daily Wrap-Up Crew show as a guest. It was not his show. He went on as a guest. He knew what the deal was. Sorry, you're going to hear me move my chair and adjust it because of my back. He knew what the deal was on that show. And you fraud Johnson. Okay, let me use that one there. Base Muslim. Assalamu alaikum, man. What's good, LOM? So, and it's going to be the last time I'm able to record a live, probably for a long time, because tomorrow, unless I record it really early in the morning, you all's time tomorrow, I'm going to go back because we're on a holiday now. I'll go back to the city in which I used to live and visit my girlfriend and my wife. And for those of you that have listened to me before, you know why I say that. So he is an enemy, largely because he is telling black men to keep it black, and that by itself could actually not be a statement of an enemy. But there's something else at play here. Number one, Ungawa Johnson intentionally ignored something very important. What he ignored is the fact that it is not the black man in the West or the East that ever functioned as a sexual labor union. It never was. The Western black and white and Asian woman have functioned as a sexual labor union to try to decrease the output and to put a limit on the quality that they must be and give while demanding extra quality from men. And all of this in exchange for, as part of their lower quality, less sex, even though women enjoy sex. They're insisting on putting out less of it. Now, do you think that they really want to be celibate or just have less sex in quantity? That's not it. They just don't want to have to sleep with their husbands. They don't want to have to actually marry responsible men if it means sleeping with them. So what they want to do is put up an idea that they don't really want to lay down with anybody the whole time. They got a few guys that just they'd rather all share. They don't mind. So we know how that goes. The dual mating strategy in which they want to engage is, I think, the end goal of their war. But they've engaged, they have become a part of they have become a sexual labor union. So that pretty much they have artificially limited the choices that you men have, that you brothers have if you stay in the West. I mean, brothers aren't leaving the West for nothing. They did this, men did not. White men did not. Black men did not. Asian men born and raised in the West did not. All of the women of these groups that were born and raised in the West did do it. Ali Wong, a Chinese American comedian, talks about this in her comedy. In her comedy skit, when she's not pregnant, she sat up and pretty much red-pilled her whole audience. She sat up and she said, and maybe I can find it. Let me try to do a screen share just to see if that'll work. Hold on. I'm going to do a search for Ali Wong and see if you can see what she said. Yeah. Oh boy. All right. Y'all are going to, if you can hear the sound of this, this is going to really bake your noodle. I'm going to try a screen share. Um, all right. If this will give me the share audio checkbox, then I will do it. Share tab audio. Excellent. All right. I think you all now can see the best of Ali Wong. Tell me if you can. Let me know if you all can see it. I didn't start to play the sound yet, but tell me if you can see it. Okay. All right. One city can see it. Let's see here. Tell me if you can hear it. Could y'all hear what she just said? Were you all able to hear her in what she said just now? Okay, so no audio came through. She said, I think about cheating on my husband every 5 minutes. I haven't done it yet. I'm now going to change something. And I'm going to see if it will allow you to hear the audio. I'm unplugging the microphone that I had in. My own voice may have changed to hear this.
Not because I'm a good person only because no worthy opportunity has presented itself. I think.
Were you all able to hear the audio on that one? Were you all able to hear the second half? Okay. She just said that she had not cheated yet. Okay, sorry. Passport OG said that he could hear that second half. Was the sound fairly clear? In any case, she said that she had not done it yet, but not because she's a good person. She had not done it yet only because a worthy opportunity had not presented itself. Ali Wong is married to a man of similar background to her, an Asian man. I think he was born and raised in the West as well. These are the same ones to whom pro-wax point and say that they have all of this stuff together and that they haven't done anything wrong and that there's no reason for us to not imitate them in certain things. Don't try to look like them, but learn how to run a community the way that they run a community. No, the secret is that they have their own nations. And they still leave them sometimes to go to nations like Western nations, and they pay for it. In any case, let me let you hear something else that she had to say. I'm going somewhere with this.
When a man doesn't sleep with you right away, it's not because he respects you. It's because he has a small dick. Do not fall for that trap. I fell for that shit once. Fell in love and into a semi-long-term relationship with a man who kept on wanting to wait to have sex. And I assumed it was because he thought I was so special and amazing and worth waiting for. He was hiding something. Months later, he finally agrees to get busy and unveils this tiny mess of a thing that wouldn't even reach your molars. It was a black dude. Creepy, right? Like seeing a homeless Asian person. What happened to him?
Now, you all can hear something. I know it's not funny, LaRue, for the most part. But, I guess it would be funny if we weren't so red pill aware, if we weren't so red pill knowing. But this is, in fact, the community that Ungawa Johnson, or one of the communities Ungawa Johnson tells us to which we should compare ourselves. Like they have their stuff together. And he says, no matter how long they lived in America, they remain who they were when their ancestors got off of the boats. No, the hell they don't. No, America changes everybody. Western nations in general change everybody within the first generation. Kids who weren't even born in the US, but who lived all of their childhood in the US or in other Western countries cannot adjust when they get deported all of a sudden to the countries in which they actually were born. This is the dangerous part. Don't let people fool you into thinking this. That's not how this works. Ungawa Johnson is sitting up and trying to tell you. Now, mind you, she sat up here and she is stating that she wants to cheat on her husband. And there are other clips where she talks about, if you watch the full thing in your free time, she red pills. Just take this clip I showed you. I'm going to plug the microphone in so that my voice will be clearer and closer, inshallah. But I want y'all to factor this in. Ali Wong red pills her entire audience when it comes down. She red pills the audience and tells the audience, in a nutshell, that because she's been with the same man for this long, that she's tired. And also, she pressured her husband to propose to her. She didn't propose to him. She pressured him to propose to her. So he did. So she accepted. So they got married, had their domestic life. And she says that looking back on it, she didn't know if her comedy career was going to go anywhere, but now she knows she can make it without him. And she thinks that he has too good of a deal because he, with his little $40,000 a year job in his yardist, gets to nut on her face and she's a millionaire. That's how she feels. They got their stuff together, and Ungawa Johnson keeps talking about these other groups having their stuff together. And mind you, this is not what he said to the Daily Wrap-Up crew. This was not the talk there. I heard it. What he said to the Daily Wrap-Up crew was not even about others. But that forms the premise and the basis for just about everything that he says to them and everything that he says to us. So Ungawa Johnson moves on and he continues to say already. He interrupts them at every turn. He is a guest on their show, but he interrupts them at every turn. Is cut them off. He'll ask sorry about that. I paused because I got a notice that the microphone was unconnected. So getting back to what I was stating, Ungawa Johnson ignores how others don't have their stuff together. Neither all the time when they're back home in their countries, which is why they want to leave when they do leave. Not all of them do. And also how he kept on interrupting. He just keeps on doing it. He did it on the Daily Wrap-Up crew as their guest. He kept on interrupting. He never stopped interrupting them. And that's exactly what sisters have been doing the whole damn time. Sisters interrupt to deflect, to flip things back on you, to give you an attitude, to stonewall you, to not cooperate with you. The Wyatt woman does that to her man for the same reasons. I'm sure that Ali Wong, when she gives her husband enough hell and he says something about it, she interrupts him because she's already thought about how she's going to do this. I would say to Ali Wong's husband, Don, if you're ever listening to this, if you believe that adultery is wrong, then don't do it. Just bounce on it. Unless these are actually jokes and you gave her permission to tell them from before, then just bounce on it. But if you don't think adultery is wrong, cheat on her. I think it's wrong, but if you don't, then go ahead and cheat on it. If you believe it's wrong, make her think you're cheating on her. Hey, she's the millionaire. Show her some gender equality in the divorce court. And hit her for the attorney's fees too. And when people come at you and say, but you're the man, say, nope, shuck up, gender equality. I don't want to hear that. Yep, I'm the man, but she's all about gender equality until it came down to the salaries and she started making more than me. She didn't give up the salary so that I'd make more than her. No, she just looked to me to magically have more than the law provided for me. Tell them that. Ungawa Johnson has ignored the fact that in the West, regardless of race, the women are weaponized against you as a sexual labor union to artificially decrease the quality that is out there available for you to choose. So the reality is, if you don't choose well, you're the one that didn't have the choice in the first place. If they don't choose well, they just chose badly. Ungawa Johnson knows this. He just didn't fivaguck, and he didn't have the decency to tell them this. He kept telling them, well, it's our fault that there are Pookies for them to select anyway. Wait a minute. So if there are good men that exist, enough to blame them for the existence of the Pookies and not the Pookies themselves, then why the hell is it that they're not being chosen? The fact that you're saying that they're there to be blamed for something means that the sisters are now wrong for not choosing them by sisters' own words, because they're complaining about the lack of good men. They don't want good men. The thing about the Western sister, and really the Western woman in general, but the Western sister exaggeratedly so, is that which makes you responsible and a viable candidate is the same thing that makes you unattractive. That's what he was ignoring, and he knew he was ignoring this. How do you know? Because he said he had conversations with sisters. He said that in the conversations with sisters, he would tell them about their accountability. But you men, if you're men, shouldn't be worried about what I had to say to them. No. If he had to say it, then that means it was important enough to be said. That means it was important enough for us to worry about whether or not these sisters are hearing it. Either it's important or it's not. If it's not important enough for us to worry about whether or not you said it, it wasn't important enough for us. It wasn't important enough for for Ungawa Johnson to say it. Even when I call him Brother Johnson, it's with sarcasm. Keep this in mind. Ungawa Johnson, in the end, is ignoring things that are right up in his face. He talked to the panel on Fox Soul. Do you all remember the gender bender that was on there? Not one of us blamed, well, no one that I know with any sense blamed Ungawa Johnson for being deceived by the gender bender. The issue was that the next day, the gender bender was sitting up there on her own camera talking about something. And girl, we had his thing just jumping in his pants. Like, wait a minute. You couldn't see his junk. His camera wasn't on his junk. So what are you talking about? You were the one passing yourself off as though you were born a lady. And he didn't know any different. He doesn't know you. We didn't blame him for that. But now you want to sit up and blame him for not knowing. And also want to imply that he's actually attracted to dudes that pretend to be women, not attracted to women. Okay, so hold up. After that disrespect, he still didn't learn, but he knew what happened. Oh, he knew all about it. Because see, the thing is, Ungawa does try to talk some accountability into the sisters. They don't want to hear it, but he does try to talk some into them. The problem is he gets up in front of the men, wants to talk accountability to the men. So this means that he's not a coward. Okay, not a coward, but he still wants to lay the blame evenly on both. Ain't no even blame. In the end, it comes down to this. We aren't to blame. We're innocent. They're guilty. It's that simple. We never function as a sexual or financial labor union sitting up saying to them, we're going to artificially lower the quality that they can get. The closest that any black men came to that is when some black men said that others need to stop simping. And even then, we haven't used the word simping or even had a word for something like that all this time. We are now looking back at the songs of the 90s and saying they were simping. We're now looking back and saying that. This is interesting, Mr. Curry, because he could not. And we didn't fault him for not knowing. We just said that the way he was being treated afterwards should have told him right there what we were dealing with. There's something else, though. The black, if we're talking about Ali Wong, I think she's still married to him, but might not be. I didn't see anything about a divorce, but I do know that he should become the ex-husband and hit her up for the money. And again, I state that that's if they didn't talk about this before. If he gave his permission, he doesn't have grounds to do this, but if he did not, then either she needs to split the salary for that, at least that showed with him. as a show of she was wrong or he needs to bounce. Because I mean, in the end, it comes down to this. She's just, if they didn't have a previous agreement, then this is just disrespectful as hell. She even says that because it's funny because she said she's been with him for 10 years and now she's got these jokes to tell. Good morning, I'm listening. So getting back to Ungawa Johnson, and by the way, y'all, I'm not asking for a lot. Actually, I'm going to let you all in on a little secret. I'm asking for a little bit from many of you in the Cash App, not even because of the dough. I've become addicted to the sound that the Cash App makes on its notification. So that's why I'm putting a tag in. I mean, granted, yeah, there is the business to run. And I wanted to thank y'all because this time, and this is the second month that the business has been open. Normally, I would have, it would have taken, for most businesses like this, it would have taken until about the fall for it to break even. In this case, because of you all's help, we almost broke even this last month. Almost broke even. There were only two tabs to pay, which came out to they came out to less than, let me see. Yeah, they came out to less than less than 160 US dollars. I was able to pay the difference, and I appreciate it. So even then, we're not behind, and we're actually very close. It was a very close margin, which is abnormally good for this. Now, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this to thank those of you that have come through on the Cash App before, because yeah, I did put it to the business in the third country, so I appreciate that. And some people were able to get paid on time because of you all's help, including the one that's actually running the business on my behalf there as an agent. God bless him. Walaikum salam, Abdul Malik. No, not this year. They don't actually allow you to go just subsequently like that. So since I went last year, I would not have been able to go this year, even if I had applied. So Ungawa Johnson, but yeah, when it comes to the Cash App, I want to tell you that in actuality, it's not really the amounts are nice. I appreciate that. Some of y'all have been, it's a few of you that are actually very generous each time, and I appreciate that. But for the others, actually, I would appreciate, even if it's just one, even if it's just these small amounts. It's really the sound of the notification I'm hooked on, and I start getting nervous if I don't hear that sound for about a week. I start getting antsy. Whether it's $1 or 100, I just start getting antsy if I don't hear the sound after usually about the span of a work week. So anyway, getting back to this, Ungawa Johnson knows what the disrespect is. Not only did he go on that panel and talk and get disrespected the next day, there's more. He said that he's been having conversations with sisters a lot. So one or two things are happening. These conversations are not recorded, but he is having these conversations, or he's actually having these conversations. I mean, he's actually having them if they're not recorded, or he's lying about having the conversations. It's one of those two. I actually think that he's having some conversations with sisters and they're not recorded. But the thing is that if he's holding them accountable, then he knows how impossible that is, because he does know who Kevin Samuels is. And if he's having conversations with sisters and telling them anything about accountability, then he's getting the same feedback that Kevin Samuels got, that Kendra G gets now, that Dennis Sperling has gotten before, that BGS Ibmore has gotten before, that LOM has heard. And LOM is here in the chat. Base Muslim is here in the chat, and he's heard the kind of feedback they've gotten. We've all heard the feedback Kevin Samuels got. Most of us have heard the feedback that Kendra G gets. In the end, it comes down to this. He said to them, to Daily Wrap-Up Crew, that he's telling sisters, now when it comes to them brothers from the continent, you can't talk to them where you talk to brothers here. And they said, no, they can't talk to us like that here either. This is where Ungawa Johnson lost something. But see, we haven't done anything. Somebody came and did it to us. And when it comes down to the goddamn Wyatt man, everybody's been catching it. So what this means is that around the globe, all folks have been catching it from that Western European colonizer invader, but not all of them are turning on their men. No, that is a first world thing. I've seen interviews where some Japanese women will turn, or they'll say some derogatory things about the size of their men's genitals, but that's if they were asked. Even then, they didn't say that their men were worthless. The two that said anything at all said, well, yeah, I mean, they're kind of small. And they giggled and laughed. They didn't say the men were worthless and bad men and they were conquered beta males, nothing like that. They didn't say anything of that nature. There's more. If you go to Guatemala, and BGS Ibmore has been to Guatemala and has talked about this, with nothing, those ladies don't disrespect their men. Some of you have been to Southeast Asia. Sometimes people there are loaded. Sometimes people there they don't have anything. But it's not normal for the women to just go disrespecting their men. So what he did pretty much was say to these sisters and say to Daily Wrap-Up Crew, oh no, it's okay when they come to you like this. So he pretty much sat up and said that the Western black man is the worst man on the planet. You don't have to tell Boom Shika she can't talk to the Wyatt man like that. Matter of fact, to be honest with you, some sisters make the mistake of thinking that they can talk to the Wyatt men even worse. A few of them do. A few. They usually try to get familiar first and then they cross these lines. But some of them fall into thinking that. The way I know that is because looking like I do, they used to think they could talk to me like that a long time ago. They started off thinking that way. I think y'all might have heard that notification sound. And I would like to thank S. Jock for coming through on the Cash App from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. And I hope you can see the reply I just sent. See, that's the sound. Even if it's just $1, it's that sound I like, actually love. And I openly admit that. And I don't know why. So he knows that he's sitting up and telling Western brothers. And quiet as is kept. There are those who actually like Western brothers around the globe, and then there are those that like brothers in general around the globe. It goes both ways. There are those who it can go either way. I've been out with partners from Nigeria over here in this country, and I've seen where they get stares. And in Riyadh, especially when I'm out with the rapper named B Deep, we both get stares. Now they don't know. As a matter of fact, B Deep knows about this. And if he's listening, he can corroborate. Day before yesterday, we were in the car. We were on our way to, actually, ironically, we were on our way to eat some Chinese food. They got a Chinese Muslim brothers, got a restaurant out here. It's pretty good. So we were on our way to there. I think we were right down the street from it, in traffic. A lady pulled up next to B Deep and rolled her window down to ask him a question. and asked him in Arabic. So that means she knows he's an Arabic speaker. Ask him in Arabic about her lips, were they beautiful or not. I was there when it happened. So when we are around the globe, sometimes it's if you're a Westerner, sometimes it's just if you're a brother, period. The thing is that it's not that all women are digging you and want a piece of you, but a lot of them do. But the ones that do are less likely to hide it. That means there's something of value they see in us. Because if they want us, they're less likely to hide the fact that they want us. So not everyone is an enemy per se. Now, would I have said, let's go for this bronze Arab woman? No, I wouldn't have said that. B Deep ain't into that, and I ain't either. But the point is, it will come to us at times. Sometimes they'll eyeball us. Especially if I wear the pants that I bought in this country because they're a bit smaller in size and not as baggy. And I'm a normal dude. I mean, I'm not very skinny or very fat. My weight is very normal for my height. So I'm trying to figure out what the hell it is about when I have to wear the smaller pants or the tighter fitting pants, because I'm not a weightlifter. So how do I not just blend in with the background like everyone else? Well, since I've been in Riyadh, I've gotten a bit darker. But I know that when it comes down to sisters in the West, it just, you being a light-skinned man, they'll test you more. At least they used to. They probably test everybody now the same, but it used to be they would test you more. So sometimes, on occasion, when they start to really crap testing that Wyatt man that they got, I know what that's about. Sometimes some of these Wyatt men get with him and start getting abused. We might think they don't ever do that to him. No, sometimes they do. And they might even do worse to them than what they would do to one of us, because they think physically this guy's weaker. So if he does get angry, so what? Yeah, there are those who think that. Because I was one of the guys that used to see this coming from them years ago. And I'm not even Wyatt. Now, back then, a lot of this was subconscious. They weren't always aware of it. At least I thought they weren't. But see, Ungawa knows about a lot of this stuff. He's seen it before. And if he's really had these conversations with them, he knows that they don't accept accountability for anything. They always say, but. It's always our fault in the end. And there's nothing he can tell them. He knows this. But he really told on himself when he said to them, you can get you a man from the continent, but you can't be talking to them the way you talk to brothers here. Wait, excuse me? We're saying to them nowadays, no, you can't even talk to us like that, because you know not to talk to other men this way. And we don't accept accountability for the existence of Pookies just because sisters chose them. We were not Pookies. We made ourselves available so they don't have to come after us if they don't want to. But what they do have to do is be honest. They absolutely must be honest and state that they just want Pookies. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Some of you may have seen this before, but some of you may not have seen this before. This time, I'm not about to share something with you that is audio. This time, I'm going to show you something that's not audio, if I can get the tabs to move. As a matter of fact, I just thought about something. Why even do that? I can log into Facebook and I can show you all. No. Actually, you need to see both. Now that I think about it, no, you need to see both. Some of you saw the first thing I'm going to show you already, and some of you did not. So let me share this screen with you. Now you can see this. Is it clear to you? Are y'all able to see it? All right, I think I had a bad connection for a second, but are you all able to see the community tab? What I posted in the community tab earlier, I'm showing it for those of you who may not have seen it before. Can you all see what it says? All right. Line of MGTOW can see it. Now, for those who may not be able to see it, I'm going to go ahead and read out what it says. A tweeter named Kindhearted Zia asked the question, how come the fathers of your children never match the type of mentors you want for them? And another tweeter named Serenity, username solely Serenity, answered, because the mentors we want for our children be having whack dingling, although she's not using that word. I tried dating a community leader once. His dingling didn't match his message. So she tried it once, just once. Meanwhile, you can get hurt in multiple ways, again and again and again, in a row, back to back. No exceptions. But you're not supposed to have your guard up, and you're not supposed to draw conclusions. And you're not supposed to jump to conclusions. You're supposed to just be okay with it. Okay. Shouts out to D. Minton from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. I really appreciate that. I mean that. This was more generous than I expected. I'm not sure if you all could hear the notification sound, but it came through on my end. And I think it's going to come through on the second. Yep, there it is. That's it coming through on the speaker. One comes through on my microphone that's plugged in and I'm wearing the headset. And then the other one comes through on the phone. So if I hear it before you can hear it, that's the reason why. Thank you so much, sir. I mean that. So this tweeter answers that that's what it is. One community leader. One community leader. And she's allowed to sit up and now say, the mentors we want for our children be having whack dingling. Hold the hell up. So what is the biological link between having the mental faculties and morals to mentor children and having an underperformance in the bed? What biological? So they always think that things that are not related, they can relate to each other somehow. This is why you can look at things that are not related, but you can make a correlation between these things and them. It's because they're not biologically correlated, but sisters think that things that are not biologically correlated are correlated, and therefore they behave accordingly. To give another example of what I mean, sisters sit up and say things. I mean, sisters try to predict men's behaviors by skin tone, not by what you choose to wear, not by your grooming, not by these things, no, but by skin tone, they try to predict these things. Goodness. Thank you so much. From Phil, from the bottom of my black heart and the depths of my black mind. Thanks a million. Muchas gracias. That sound is something else. I might actually, for until extinction or judgment day. Yes, sir. Until extinction or judgment day. We win or we die. So they draw these conclusions. I mean, you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked if you heard some of the things that sisters used to say about black mind coming up. And I can remember that one of my exes uh, was questioned as to why uh, she didn't have another boyfriend. Now, at this time, I lived in Atlanta, but she was in my hometown, and she nicknamed me Ghetto Red, as just as a nickname. It was a joke, but she said, "Oh, Ghetto Red satisfies," and this was a big shock to these other women. So you'd be shocked at times. And so, in any case, yeah, what I was going to tell you was that they think that you can take these things that are not correlated and correlate them. And so, therefore, that's why they behave in such a way that you can look at them and start to predict their behaviors and choices they will make. Now, we don't do that as men a lot of times, but we can. Why do we not do it? I don't know. We should, but we don't. Not because, well, I know why, because we know that that's not realistic in most cases. But when you're dealing with the Western sister, it is realistic. Now, if you're dealing with a crop of women that are so backwards and so anti-intellectual that they insist on believing that you can look at someone and determine voluntary choices they will make based on involuntary phenotype traits, then how do you save them? You can't, because when people start to believe this, they will start to behave accordingly. Why do you think you can see a correlation between sisters' own skin tones and their attitudes? It's not because there's a biological correlation. It's because they think there's one. You can't save someone like that, because for you to tell them that that's foolish means that you're just too intellectual for their taste anyway. It's over. And Ungawa Johnson is sitting up and telling you to stay stuck on that. Don't ever try to move past that. And by the way, just go ahead and accept it against massa. But here's the problem. Nobody wins against massa like that around the world yet. I mean, that day's coming, I'm sure, but ain't nobody's really won. I'm pretty sure that the original Australian women give their men grief. I bet money they do. That will be done here. So let me go ahead and show you all something else. Let me show you all what someone else had to say. This is a lady from South Africa that stated what I'm going to show you next. Now, I will read it out to you in case you can't see it because of the small print. I don't think if I blew this up, it would make a big difference. No, the print's going to stay the same. So I'm going to read it. Now, at the top is the name of the poster, Pretty Tandiwe Kumalo. And I might go and see what city she's in. She posted this on November the 20th of 2022. These are the words of her post. Good guys are boring for us when we are still fresh. They are not entertaining and mentally challenging. They can't be themselves, always trying to impress us while we want real men. Good guys are only good to be stepfathers after the whole phase. After tiredness of running with guys who make us wet. Good guys are for stability after the prime of a woman. That is why we can manipulate then instead of them, saying good men raise other man's kids. Her English punctuation, these things are jacked up. She doesn't know where one sentence begins and another one ends. Thank you, PK Angel. Let me see if I can do that. Let's see if that'll work. Looks like it blew up for you. Now I'll let you guys, I'll leave it up here for a bit so you can see it and read it for yourselves. And then I will show you where this broad is. My thanks again to Harun, S. Jock, D. Minton, and Phil for coming through. I mean that. And I think this month, some of this can go to the cleaning cost of the new business. Since it's new, the floor's got to be cleaned up. All right. Thanks a million, PK Angel. Thank you for explaining how to zoom out. I'm sure y'all had enough time to see this now. But before I do scroll out, I want to show you one more mother cuss word thing. Apparently one mutual friend, okay, lives in Mafeking and from Pretoria, South Africa. She's a manager at the Pretoria Botanical Gardens. And the thing is, I don't think she was saying this to justify it. I think she was saying this to explain it. But this is South Africa. Stop and think about that. That's not the United States. John W. To be honest with you, man, I think that we may not have that long to wait. My sound might go out, guys. I'm sorry about that. I was just notified that the connection is weak again. But this time I've got my best. Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Yep. Weak connection. Had to log back out and back in. But when he does come back, John, yeah, they will be. But the truth be told, it'll be more than just them. The standards will actually be higher than what we expect. We'll find out, though. When he comes back, there will be those to whom he will give a chance. You'll see what I mean then if we're alive at that time. But she is pretty much, either way it goes, it's a confession that that's what we're facing. Whether she's saying that this is how it's supposed to be, whether she's lamenting about that. She's stating that that's what we're going to face. This is not the U.S. Geographically, this is not the West. It's developed. But even politically, they don't call themselves a Western nation. They don't align themselves with Western nations all the time. They do business as trading partners and have a certain level of development. That's what they've got. But let's take a look at this. Ungawa Johnson is telling brothers to stick with either the diaspora or the continent Now, most of us are going to anyway. I mean, I myself, as I was about to consider Southeast Asian women, um, began to discuss marriage with my current wife. And truth be told, I thought she was engaged or married until someone explained that she paid attention to me at a time I didn't know about it. And I had met her before as a neighbor, so I knew that if she in fact was doing that, then that meant that she was not engaged or married. Had it not been for her, myself would have been with the one other option that I know that I can, with a good conscience, tell brothers to explore. But a lot of them are doing it anyway. See, Ungawa is not giving brothers credit for having enough good sense. Most of us are already going to stick with the diaspora or the continent or Southeast Asia because that's where we're also valued and not mistreated. Not only by the individual women, you can come here and find women that will value you and not mistreat you as an individual, but their families will say absolutely not. Now, if you're not Muslim, they're supposed to say absolutely not. That's nothing personal or racial. That's just the rules. But even if you are, but you're not Saudi, and then you're black, the families who don't hate you will still say, yeah, but you ain't supposed to. They'll say to her, yeah, but you ain't supposed to marry him. And that's when they don't hate you. You go into Southeast Asia, they ain't like that. That Thai lady wants to marry you, her family doesn't say no because you're black. In the Philippines, certainly not. If that were the case, brothers would have reported trouble there. They would have reported this kind of trouble. That's not what brothers are reporting over there. So Ungawa was already not giving brothers enough credit for going where the best options for us are. The fact that he does not make an exception for the Southeast tropical women of Asia, Southeast tropical Asian women, I should say, tells you something. Ungawa is one of them pro-wax that doesn't spend enough time abroad to tackle this thing internationally. I live abroad. I could have helped him. But I already know that type. They wouldn't listen to someone like me. Austin Holloman has lived abroad. He could have schooled Ungawa Johnson on a few things. But Ungawa wouldn't listen to him either. You see where I'm going with this. I want to tell you something about this one, Bluster. The guy from the continent was Nigerian. And in Malaysia, they actually don't have a problem with black folks. They actually are fond of Somalis, Sudanese, and South Africans, and other Africans in general. The only complaints that some of them have are that if they rent a property to people from the continent, they might move a bunch of folks in. And usually those complaints are not about the Sudanese or the Somalis, because as Muslims, they will live with their families instead of just bringing a bunch of people in. Other than that, they don't really have complaints about Africans. They have complaints about specifically Nigerians. Now, they don't know Northern Nigerians or even Nigerian because of the names. But when you have a Southern name like Okoro or Ikechukwu, then they recognize those names as Nigerian, especially names from the Igbo or the Yoruba languages. So they know when they say Nigerian, they're thinking of the Southerners, not the Northerners. They do take issue with them. It's not because of them being from Africa, but it's because of the Nigerian way of speaking, especially in the South. So they do take issue with Nigerians, and they will tell you this. They will straight up say, oh no, the women are just like the men. They need to calm down. They'll tell you that they need to take some chill pills. So that's the thing about Malaysia. And I say that because I was in Malaysia twice. And the second time I went, I was with my wife. She's recognizable. And after about 2 days in I wouldn't say the tropics, the whole thing's in the tropics, but after 2 days in a resort, I was more recognizable. And we were loved. It was love, especially with me speaking a little bit of Bahasa to them. It was love. They would ask us like, where y'all from? And I would say that I was West African raised in America, which is the truth. My DNA is West African. I say I'm a West African raised in the States, and my wife is East African, raised in one of the Gulf countries, and then later in the States. And both of us now live in the Middle East and work there. And it was love, straight up. My wife has a sibling that lives in the capital, so we visited this sibling, and the sibling has two daughters, one old enough to run around and play, and she was playing with the locals. When we went back to the apartment complex, she was playing with the locals like it was nothing. And she could speak Bahasa, so it was cool. It was love. In actuality, they're a little bit distrustful of Orang Putih. And Orang Putih means white people. There was a man from Zimbabwe that started some kind of business in Malaysia. And my buddy there was happy. He was through the roof. And I was shocked because he said, if we can get more people to do this, we can get Wakanda. Like we can have one for real. I was looking like, what did you say? Because he's Malay. He's not black. Matter of fact, we were talking just yesterday. So it is true that in Malaysia, they do have folks they don't like. But guess who else they don't like? Now, when it comes to Africans, they only got a problem with Nigerians for the same reasons other Africans say they got issue with Nigerians. And they usually mean Southerners because they don't know a Northern is Nigerian until he says so. But guess who else they don't like? And it doesn't matter nationality. They dislike Arabs so much that they don't distinguish by nationality. They don't like Arabs. A Yemeni guy ran a red light in November of 2018. Yemeni, right? Ran a red light, hit a lady, killed her. Didn't mean to do it, but it was reckless driving. Whole country found out about it. It was like, that's enough of these folks, enough of them. And they just started keeping them at a distance. They opened up businesses, and Malay people would just boycott it. Just boycott it right off the bat. They won't go. So Arabs actually have to pay more to open up businesses in tourist areas so that they can get tourist dollars because the locals will not support them. The Indians won't, the Chinese won't, and the Malay people now won't do it. Used to be, man, Indonesians and Malaysians, they loved Arabs at one point. Now they're like, you smoke, you talk aggressive, you mean, And the thing is, my buddy who told me about this, he said, I kick him out my car. Because he drove a taxi for a little while. He said, I kick him out. I smoke, but not in the car. They smoke in the car. And I pull over and I say, you get out. That's it. The ride is over. Don't you ever smoke in my car again. And the next person tell you don't smoke in their car, don't smoke in their car. Now, these are Malaysians, bro. You know they nice people. If you met any, you know they real nice. But this dude was like, he said, I'm not nice to Arabs because they're not nice back until you mean. I was like, you got a point. That guy that told me this is 1/4 Arab. So anyway, now that I cleared that up, I wanted to stay to this about the about Ungawa and why he's an enemy. Ungawa knows that, oh, this is it. Yeah, I see it right here. Good job, Bluster. Good job. It is a red flag. On one hand, he doesn't want to owe anybody, and I understand that. But on the other hand, he doesn't want to trust somebody, and he's not going to be able to do this on his own. Ain't no messiahs running around here. The Messiah got taken up by God for a reason, and there was a limit to what he could and was allowed to do, and it wasn't his fault. The Messiah, peace be to him, did what he could. It got so bad that he had to be rescued and taken up. Some people say he was killed. No, he wasn't killed. Our book tells us they think they crucified him and they killed him. They're not lying when they say they did it, but they didn't kill him and they didn't crucify him. It just looked like it. That's what they thought was going on. We raised him up to ourselves. And that we is the royal we in those verses. That's pretty much the Lord saying, I gave him a supernatural rescue because he was going up against a real problem by himself, no help. So I stepped in, and he's going to come back and finish out his lifespan But we ain't ready for that. I mean, we Muslim, we're looking forward to his return, but I can't say we're prepared for it. So I know ain't nobody else prepared because we actually know more of what to expect. I don't think anybody's fully prepared. You hope you're one of those that can adjust when he gets back. But I mean, that's a hell of a return. And Ungawa, because it's an insult to people named Omar to call him that. Ungawa thinks he gets to be some kind of black messiah. No, he doesn't. He can do this, but he's going to have to do it with other people's help. I can't start a business, a small business, with somebody's help. And mine is educational supply. He wants to start a school with nobody's help. People don't offer to do stuff like help with plumbing or air conditioning for free. He just has to wait until they can do it because they ain't going to charge him nothing. He don't get back to them because he doesn't want to owe someone. Everybody owes. And that's where the problem comes in. These pro-wacks. See, if you become pro-black and you actually mean to be pro-black, that's where the issue comes in. You're welcome, Bluster. Glad to do it. I hope it helped. And that's because I don't want them to be taken. I don't want us taking non-enemies as enemies. That's pro-black. To tell your people, don't take a non-enemy as an enemy. That's a pro-black thing to do. Ungawa was not on that. Ungawa was like, everybody's our enemy. I don't know why he says it. But Ungawa was sitting on the solution. He claims he's Muslim. He's sitting on the solution, but he don't want to take it seriously. He wants to play with it. He wants to mix the solution with other beliefs. Ain't no worshiping no ancestors. The Christians in my chat, Hebrew Israelites in my chat, and Muslims in my chat all agree that you can love your ancestors, but we cannot worship them. We can't call on them, especially when they're dead. You can't call on them for something when they're dead that you would not have asked them for when they were alive. Guide me, rescue me, stuff like that. How you going to ask somebody that passed away to do these things in this life when if they were alive, you would have called them on the phone and asked them for advice, but you would not have said that they could come and supernaturally do stuff? How you going to do that? When they were free to walk around the face of the earth as far as they could afford to travel, we didn't ask for these supernatural things from them. Now they're limited to their grave, and we want to put this burden on them. Man, let them sleep. They just like us. They came from a womb. They were born, they lived, they passed away, and we're going to pass away. We know that this is the cycle. Ungawa wants to delve into this stuff, talking and having conversations with ancestors. And he'll say, like, when he woke up, you have a better shot of talking with them when you're asleep than when you wake up. But he don't want to read that stuff. He wants to play around with what the solution is. You can start off as pro-black sincerely, but when you get to this point, when you start rejecting proper guidance when it's come to you, you will wind up becoming a pro-whack even if you didn't expect it. And that's what happened with him. He went down that path. Now here he is, pro-whack. Now he said years ago, over a decade ago, that the reason he did not relocate back to the mother continent was because his mom needed him there in the States. I don't blame him for loving his mom enough to stay. You don't blame him for loving his mother enough to stay. But the right thing, if he could afford to relocate, the right thing for him to do was to relocate and put her in a comfortable home. That would have been the right thing to do. If she refused, she refuses. But if she was really as pro-black as him, she would have said, son, now baby, you going back home. We were torn away. We didn't ask to go. We didn't ask to come here. You got this opportunity. You going back home, baby. I'm going to be all right. You come visit, or I'll come visit you. That would have been the right thing to do. Apparently that's not what happened. I need you here. So that means he's dealt firsthand with sisters not promoting actual repatriation, repatriation, and a return back to what really is African. And it ain't gynocracy and matriarchy. It might have included Amazon warriors, but it was not a gynocracy and matriarchy. Not at all. If it was, how long did they last? Hell, even the Dahomey Kingdom with the Amazon warriors that was so celebrated, and the Dahomey Kingdom was gangster. They did horrible, brutal things to keep the people subjugated. They didn't last forever. Guess how they got started? The Oyo Empire or Yoruba Empire subjugated them. And when they finally threw off the Oyo Empire, they said never again. And so they became the beast of their region. And when the French came with just regular muskets, they weren't able to stop them. But they had kings. We've had situations where women like Nzinga, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu, Charles. We've had situations where women like Nzinga wanted to be kings, you know, wearing male clothes, putting female clothes on their male concubines and a bunch of male concubines at that. Yeah, if that's true. Could be alive, but if that really is true, we've dealt with some stuff like this on the continent. But I'm also going to tell you that sustainably, it's been men that had to run things. They've had to. Zinga put up a hell of a resistance. What happened in the end, though? That land still fell to the Portuguese. And I'm not even blaming her for that. I'm not blaming the Dahomey Amazon warriors for the French taking over. I'm simply saying that the sisters in the West can talk all that gynocracy, matriarchy, super black woman, goddess, queen, mother of the earth crap they want to. The question then is, how did the devil come along and rule and take over? He's not questioning these things. He's not asking himself these things. He's intelligent, but he's not wise. And he's willing to keep on talking and talking and talking. And this is why it is that he's an enemy to us. When you try to educate him and update him, he becomes the worst of the old nigga and the young fool, all rolled into one. Things change. He does not let the youth give him feedback and update him, but he wants to keep on preaching. Worse than me. I go days without preaching. This week is an abnormal week because I had 2 off days, and today's an off day, and tomorrow I'm going to be traveling, and then I got to watch my neighbor's kids for a week along with my wife and girlfriend. Don't worry, Abdul Malik, my wife and girlfriend are the same woman. I'm just trolling some other folks in the audience. But we're going to be tied up, so I know next week is not going to be one in which I can do another live, at least not as far as I know. If I do, it'll be early in the morning, my time, late at night yours. Now, that's a possibility. But even then, I'm pretty sure one of the kids will come in. Uncle Black, I'm hungry. In the middle of my life. So I know next week I can't do it. But Ungawa Johnson is sitting up here preaching and preaching and traveling, preaching. But nobody, he's not letting anybody inform him. And I understand there's a time limit on how long he can sit still and just watch something. There's a time limit on that. But if there's a time limit to this, then he needs to admit that he has not had time to sit and watch these 2 and 3 hour live streams, and that he will respond to what he did see, and he will let somebody who has watched it inform him of the rest. If he did that, he would be much more believable to us. No, he goes in and he's had time to learn about Kevin Samuels. What does he do? Young brothers start telling him, listen, this is what we facing. Yeah, but see, but. No, but how about you fuck the shuck up, Ungawa, and let them tell you something before you respond. Oh, that's the other thing. I forgot about that, brother Irby. He's from Philly. And as you know, they got some ghetto Akis in Philly. And it seems like he came up as one of them, which is probably why he doesn't take it seriously even now. That's why you and I, we Muslim, but Ungawa says that he's Muslim, but there's always a but after he says he's Muslim. No, take it seriously. Don't half step with it. Even if you are wrong about certain things, because everybody gonna do something wrong. Say that you don't represent it that well. But don't, I'm Muslim, but I believe this, that, and the other separately. No. I got more right to say I'm Muslim, but I know that white supremacy is not a part of Islam, even on a subconscious level, than what he has a right to say every time he says that I'm Muslim, but I talk to the ancestors. What you mean when you're awake? You're awake in this world with the rest of us, and you talk to the ancestors. Really? What do they say? Matter of fact, do you talk to the ancestors that live back on the continent? Oh, okay. So I guess they learned English in the grave, huh? I mean, these are the things that we need to have a discussion about. These are the things we have to ask ourselves oftentimes. And Ungawa hasn't done that. If he wants to try to help a people to dig themselves out of a major mess and a hole like this systemic oppression, and we are subjected to that, that's true, on the continent and in the diaspora, including the US, then he has to understand that wisdom is going to be necessary. I'll see, now you playing, Charles. That's exactly what Ungawa was coming and telling us. And I bet you he's going to say exactly that in a short time. The ancestors said that we need to step up. Man, how about you fuck the shuck up? LOM, that's it. Exactly. Exactly. Those aren't ancestors. If he can actually hear a reply, especially when he's awake, he can hear a reply. Those aren't ancestors talking. And peace be with you too, darknesses. I love that name. I should have stolen that one from the very beginning. Darknesses. So with that being said, Ungawa is telling us to stick with the diaspora and the continent, and that's cool to a certain extent. Except if there are other people that are not enemies, he says overlook them because they're enemies anyway. He's under the notion that they're enemies because they're not black, and that's not the case either. I'm pretty militant. If it was just that cut and dry, I would have said it years ago. I've been spying on non-blacks for a long time. I would have known, and I would have said this a long time ago. I will say that a lot of people that aren't black are, in fact, enemies to us. But there are exceptions. A lot of South Pacific Islanders are not. Southeast tropical Asians certainly are not. Do they need to know more about us? Maybe so. We can learn more about them too, but they're not enemies. So with that being the case, why does he tell you to stick to a continent where feminism and misandry is on the advance? See, he doesn't tell you look to the continent, but fight feminism and misandry. That's what you need to know about the continent. Feminism and misandry are advancing on the continent. It's not all over the place. It's not uniform. The continent's too big to be all the same, obviously. But you got to watch out for Kampala. I don't know about Kigali. Austin Holloman will tell us more as time goes on. I'll pay attention. But you got to watch out for Kampala. Nairobi, they say that they're already becoming cynical of each other, men and women alike. But A Kenyan man did tell me that a woman that curbed him in college showed up at his parents' house when he was visiting once for Christmas, pregnant, abandoned, and begging him to take her, but she had curbed him years before. That's in Kenya. Now, I assume that this was Nairobi. But you understand and you get the point. You get the picture. This is the trouble here. So in certain cities, it is advancing. South Africa, you already saw. Pretoria is close to Johannesburg. Matter of fact, if you want to fly to Pretoria, you fly to Johannesburg and then drive to Pretoria. That's where the closest airport is. You see where I'm going with that? That's South Africa for you. In rural South Africa, the men will tell you you're not going to be disrespected and slapped by these women, but they still come to you with high body counts and other men's kids. They're just more respectful about it in rural areas of South Africa. Think about that too now. Then factor in Lagos. Oh, it's horrible in Lagos. They're so materialistic in Lagos, they're open with it. They'll tell you in Lagos, if you don't have the money to send to my father, I will go and get somebody else. I will replace you. You're useless if you don't have the money. In Lagos, they're like that. So on one hand, the continent is wide and diverse, so there are traditional areas. But Ungawa tells you that it's okay to be SYSBM and passport bro as long as you're going to the continent. Maybe an Afro-Latina, but he doesn't tell you to fight the feminism and the misandry that is on the advance in these areas and making things more difficult for us over the years. Uh-oh, look at this. I want y'all to pay attention to Charles Irby's situation. This is Mombasa. I didn't know it was like that there. Did not know this. I heard about Nairobi. Mombasa, I'm learning this from you now. Also, I want y'all to pay attention. I just saw this after I got through talking. What did he say? Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. I just mentioned these places. Then I saw Charles Irby's comment. I mentioned the major cities of these areas. But in South Africa, I told you what the rural provinces are like. You still got to be stepped at. So if you got kids and you're not going to eliminate women with kids because of that reason, then you could, hit up South Africa. But if you're a childless black man, why go there? For what? And yes, it is the original South African women, the black South African women, that are the most likely to bring you another man's kids. Now, the high body count, I don't know. But another man's kids, oh, God, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One of my friends from northern Nigeria, from one of the northern states, studied in South Africa, and he said that he did not, until he lived in South Africa for a while and studied there, he did not know that a black African woman could have a child and not know who the father was. That's how different these places are. This tells you that even in southern Nigeria, if they get a high body count, they still are going to know who dad is. That's what that tells you. Because southern and northern Nigeria are not culturally like the same country. They are officially the same country. They're not culturally like that. And Ungawa tells you to limit yourself to there. Now, we saw what happened with Austin Holloman in Brazil. In Brazil, some of y'all don't know this, but I found out from another passport brother that moved to Africa, a West African country, and he's about to marry 3 women from there because it's legal. It's an Anglophone country. I'm going to tell you what he said to me. He found out because he actually knew the guy. He found out that it was actually an African-American male feminist living in Bahia that called Stephanie Ribeiro's attention to Austin Holloman. Stephanie Ribeiro was living in the U.S. with Zaddy already. She's from Brazil, but is living stateside. And so he called her attention because he knows she's a feminist to Austin Holloman, and she got on him and got the others on him. Ungawa Johnson knows that this is advancing even in Brazil. A lot of Brazilian men say that the women in Brazil are actually hiding their feminism from non-Brazilian men. I don't know how true that is, but that's what some of them have said. Whether that's true or not, the point is that feminism is known in Brazil. It is a force. It's just not in every person's relationship, but it's a force. Why is it that Ungawa is not telling brothers, focus on there, but fight the feminism and the misandry? Why does he keep leaving that out? I don't think he's a feminist. He said that it was started by the CIA. I do think it was funded. I mean, Gloria Steinem said something about working with the CIA. BGS Ibmore begged to differ, but I do remember her saying something about CIA paying her. Nonetheless, I don't think the CIA necessarily had to do it as covertly because the government was okay with it. Officially, it was. So I don't think it was limited to the CIA. Point is, Ungawa Johnson will tell you that feminism is a damn problem. So why doesn't he tell black men to counter this stuff if they're going to focus on these areas where it's on the advance? So with this being said, folks, I want to thank you all, and I mean that. I've been going for an hour, and I've tested you all's patience enough. Shouts out again to Harun, S. Jock, D. Milton, and Phil, because together you paid what it would have cost for me to tutor somebody in English for an hour privately. And I can put that to the cleaning crew that's going to tidy up the new place of business in this third country. I would have been more transparent about exactly what and where the business is, but even though it's legal, since it's educational supply, it's not something you'd have been able to patronize anyway or to support by making purchases. Because it's not in the States, and most of you are there or the UK. Very few are actually in the country in which I started it, because that's where I could afford to start it. But I do want to thank you all for coming through. Hit the share button, those of you that did not, and thank you from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind to those who did hit the share button. But for those who supported on Cash App, I really do appreciate it, and that's going to the business. And once I make enough in it, I already know a young SYSBM brother who I plan to help to adjust to life abroad. And I'm going to try to help him in person, like what Richie Mack is doing for others. So whatever you do send or donate goes to a worthy cause. Because if I didn't, I would have to answer for it on Judgment Day. And I'm actually more afraid of that than I am to have to answer for it to anybody right now. And I'm afraid to be the one, but one of them is a lot worse. So I realized that what I said was very dogmatic. I know that. It wasn't because of hatred, but it's because we are dealing with something where we got to get it right. And the last mistake that we can afford is one in which the innocent are blamed and the guilty get exonerated. That's not a mistake we can afford. And Omar was wrong. I'm sorry. Ungawa was wrong because he exonerated sisters and then he blamed brothers. But he, in fact, said that black men can find bed partners when they want, but not husbands. And then he stated that it's because he's got these two daughters. And he's not ready to accept that he has to be fair to the men, even though he has daughters. I understood that I've got to be, when I had a son, and I knew I knew that I had to be fair to both genders. When my daughter was born, I already knew that I had to be fair to both genders. I understood this from jump. He's the dad of daughters. He's not sitting up here understanding that he's still got to be fair to both genders. So he doesn't want to accept that our daughters have to appeal to men in order to become wives, just like my son has to appeal to women if he wants to become a husband. And that actually, these men becoming husbands is convenient in many ways to the women, including our daughters, and doing a lot for them, if they're decent husbands at all. He doesn't want to accept that the burden is actually on the man, even though he is one. We're the ones that have to be appealing. We have to earn. We have to convince them. Then we have to propose to them, as Ali Wong said. Notice, Ali Wong never said that she proposed to her husband. She said that she pressured him to propose to her. Don't forget that. And so because he knows that his daughters, like C Boogie's daughters, have a low chance of finding someone because of their attitudes and outside of the race, just for racial reasons alone. He knows this. So now he wants to sit up and say, well, brothers need to step it up. No. If all you have is daughters, you are perfectly right for loving your daughters and wanting the best for them. But the best way to get that is not to tell brothers to do a damn thing that they're not already doing in the West. It is to tell sisters to start appreciating it. And to tell sisters, and this is going to really hurt a lot of people, but to tell sisters that they're going to have to actually police their own preferences because they might prefer something that's no good for them. That's real. That's true. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but we all got to swallow it. Ungawa doesn't get to be the exception just because he's been preaching for years with a deep voice and his fist in the air. Last thing I'm going to tell you is that, in a nutshell, I'm talking to you about him because he's the highest profile example right now, but he's not the only enemy from within the pro-WAC ranks. He and other men have ignored, men that we may know and men we don't know, have ignored the actual gender war to give Black men advice. They've ignored the gender war just so that they can advise us that we need to just be more alpha and thump our chest and work harder to make these sisters happy. No, that's not the case. I'm going to tie this in by saying something about Rebecca Lynn Pope, because did you all notice that Rebecca Lynn Pope and he actually were related in their points? I don't mean biologically related, but did you all notice that the two of them made their statements at the same time? And what that means, I'm going to tell you if you didn't understand it, but if you did, I'll let somebody here type it in. If you did not, I'll explain what it means before I go, because it's important. So important, I saved the best for last intentionally. I'll wait for about 30 seconds for anyone to type it in if they know what the significance is of both of them making their statements close in time to each other like this. I'll wait 15 more seconds. All right. So here's the significance, because nobody wrote in and said that they could see what it is. So I'll tell you. Ungawa plays on a paranoia, rather a blackanoia. The black men are not attracted to black women. Now, we know that's a furthermucking lie on average. The only ones I find attractive really at this point, on average, are Arab women that you can tell have some black blood in them, black women, Southeast Asian women, and some Latin American women. And that's because, partially because they don't set off the threat alarm in my head the way that white women do. I've seen some white women that could be cute like little kids, but actually having that adult appeal, no. He is playing on this false blackanoia that black men will go to any non-black woman right off the bat because we just think that every other woman is more attractive than black woman. It's not the case. Well, when he plays on this, and this is what he's going to point to whenever a black man marries a woman that's not black, even if they're closely allied with us or are certainly not enemies, clearly not enemies like the Southeast Tropical Asian woman. They're not our enemies. Their families are not our enemies. Their societies are not our enemies. Understand that whenever one of us marries one of them, he's going to say that it's because we didn't like the wide nose and the big lips and the 4C hair. Oh, we. I'm sure y'all heard that one because that came through on the speaker. And shouts out to Dr. Harden from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. And I hope you're able to see my response. Hope so. I'm glad if I was able to help anybody at all. And I hope one day that what I did helps out in real life. I am now above where I would have been for tutoring English for an hour. Thank you, sir. So at the time he's talking like this, and this forms the underlying basis of what he's been saying. He said this before in other cases. I just didn't hear him say it specifically in the daily wrap-up group. But yeah, there's this idea that we just value every other woman over the black woman right off the bat because we're all brainwashed. No. Rebecca Lynn Pope sat up and said that there were groups of black men that had sworn off black women. There's a problem with that too. Rebecca Lynn Pope can't tell the future. And I can't tell the future except for what is already becoming apparent right now. I can't see the future, but I can see what is shaping out. And here's what I can see. Rebecca Lynn Pope lied because she said there were groups that had already sworn off black women. No, there are black men that have sworn off black women, but they have not formed groups yet. If they have, I never saw them. There is one black man from Lafayette, Louisiana. He and I are about the same age. He went to Morehouse. I saw him there. His name was very distinct. So when I heard his name on the attendance, I remembered the name. Later found out he and I met maybe twice, but I later found out that he was from the Gulf Coast, Lafayette, Louisiana. He's on Facebook, so his profile's public. He's with a Colombian, a mestiza Colombian, exotical looking Colombian, bone straight hair. They're about to have a baby or they had one. He stated that he does not like 4C hair. And he talks every day about the joy he has waking up to this woman. And sometimes he talks about the joy of waking up to an exotical woman. But he was conditioned, and I know this because I grew up on the same coastline as him, along the same interstate, just a fairly far drive down that interstate. But I grew up there. He's Gulf Coast, I'm Gulf Coast, Interstate 10. This man dealt with some really harsh women. Now, at the time that he and I started the Morehouse, Gulf Coast women were harsher than Atlanta women were. It later changed, but at that time, Atlanta women weren't that bad to deal with or to talk to per se. Gulf Coast women were a real nasty pill. And in high school, they were even worse. Well, those were the years that we had experience with them. So he had to deal with a really rough set of women. And I know Lafayette women are, well, Lafayette sisters are rough. I know they're rough. The reason I know is because I've had a job interview there. I worked for a company that had headquarters there once. Had to go there a few times. And the sister that worked behind the desk would grab white job candidates by the collar and tell him to fix certain things up before they got in the job interview so that they could actually get this job because she knows they need it. She mommy and everybody. Now, if she does it with a sense of humor, that's all fine and dandy, but you get the idea. They can be rough. He was conditioned, and he learned at a young age that they're just mean and harsh. Then he got with an exotical, and he probably learned that the Wyatt women were mean and harsh there too. Then he got with an exotical, and she wasn't. He's an individual. He's not part of a group. I mention this because right now, there aren't groups like this. I've seen different groups on Facebook. I didn't see a group where they were like, no black women. None. This is where it gets a bit tricky. We do know that there are nowadays more and more black boys who are being raised by some of the worst and most ratchet of moms. And they will be conditioned to not like wide nose, big lips, 4C hair, dark skin. They will want the Kim Kardashians. Black women's bodies, even if they had to buy them, exotical features. You see, they are young right now, but I think in a few years when they become old enough, they will then find each other through social media and form groups. Maybe it already happened. Maybe. But if it did, I don't see how Rebecca Lynn Pope found out about it before I did. So I maintain the position that she jumped the gun. She jumped to conclusions early, but that conclusion will come true. That is the significance of what Ungawa Johnson has been saying and what Rebecca Lynn Pope just said. We are moving towards that situation where there will be an age group of young brothers coming up that actually they won't want black women. And that's going to mean they don't even want them from the continent. It will mean that. They will say, no more N19. That will happen. And I wanted you all to know that this was coming down the pike, and I hope it doesn't actually materialize any further, but it probably will come down the pike. And we will have feminism in part to thank for that. In part. BGS can tell you how a lot of this was even independent and preceded feminism, or modern feminism at least. But for the acceleration of it, yeah, I'm pretty sure that modern feminism had a lot to do with it. So what they're exaggerating today is tomorrow's truth. And I do think that their exaggerations of this will play a role. As a matter of fact, I'm sure of it. I can actually clearly see a link in between their exaggerations of this today and the truth of it tomorrow. My apologies to anyone whose name might actually be Ungawa, and my deep and sincere condolences go to the many people in the world actually who are either named Ifatunde or Omar. I mean it when I say that I hope this message helps from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. By the way, I just saw this. Bluster is seeing this too. I don't want this misandry feminism to take over the continent, but I know it's on the advance. I know that while the continent is diverse, one side is winning and the other side is losing ground. And I'm not going to tell you to avoid the continent. I'm going to tell you that we can't afford this. We cannot afford an outright grudge in between ADOS and the continent. Now, there are things we got to hammer out and talk about. Yeah, but an outright grudge can't be afforded. Here's why. It's because of this feminism and this misandry. It's directed at black men, period. They only distinguish between black American men, black Canadian men, black Caribbean men, black Latino men, and black continental men for the purposes of advancing misandry and feminism. That's all they do. That's the only reason. We are actually going to have to trade notes with each other about the advance of this feminism and this misandry. We're going to need each other's observations. We're going to need to cooperate on this particular matter. We absolutely must. We're going to have to tell Nigerian men, your generosity is a good trait to have so long as it is limited to submissive women. Because they're known for being generous with women. That's one of the reasons why South African women will say, I'm going to get a Nigerian man. They'll say that. The generosity, yeah, but what are you? Are you submissive? These men are generous to you, but you're not submissive, and everyone knows this. Everyone has got a nasty, filthy, stink, funky attitude. And if he wasn't coming from the south of Nigeria where it was about as bad, he wouldn't know he would see the difference, and he wouldn't be generous to you. We're going to need to be able to tell them, listen, that generosity is actually good. We can learn from that. You show us where the submissive women are and show us how you budget enough to be generous so we can be generous to the submissive ones, not to the ones with the filthy, stank, funky attitude. Now, let me tell you about this particular broad over here, because this Pretoria chick you messing with is learning. She's getting her stuff from Atlanta. And that's where we come in and school him. We're going to need this. Thank you for the compliment, Bluster and 3M. And Mr. Harden, yep, I do know. That's actually where my mother's family's from. She comes from the Creole families there. It was actually our people that started the fire department of that particular city. I don't know if it was for the county or just the city, but you get the idea. So, yeah, by extension, you're actually talking to a homeboy, literally on a local level. And even when I go back to the U.S., even now, if I go back to visit, I have to pass through there. I have to. I don't have an option. And I actually like to stop right there in that place. If I'm traveling with my daughters, I try to stop there, that place overnight, get some good Gulf Coast seafood before we go further inland. Sometimes I still have to travel to Atlanta. And when I'm traveling from Atlanta back to the coast, that's where I know I'm back in my home turf. I think you know about that major bridge that goes, that big high bridge that goes over swamp. And that's when I know I'm home. So yeah, I mean it from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind when I tell you all that I hope this helps in real life. Thank you all for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum to some of you. Peace out to the rest of you. Thank you for flying with me on Jet Black Airways, where Jet Black is also a verb. And keep jetting black with me until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.